Right, to the papers now. Joining us, the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury under Margaret Thatcher, David Mellor, and Deputy Political Editor at the Daily Express, that's Sam Lister. And David, we're going to begin with you. We go to the Times. Tory rebels. OK, will there be more resignations, or is that it?
So he's finished. So we don't need to worry about that. The issue is, how is it all going to end? You know, I don't know whether you're a T.S. Eliot fan. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. And there'll be a whimper at the end as he is dragged out of number 10. But he is finished, and I think that...
Can you explain to people how he is finished? Because a lot of people don't want to believe that. He does not want to believe that. And people say if he is finished, he will have to be dragged kicking and screaming.
The reality is that it will gradually dawn on everyone around him that you cannot have... Look, you look at the leader in the Times today, where they talk about his dishonesty. You cannot have a Prime Minister spoken of in the leader of a prominent newspaper like the Times as being dishonest. You know, normally, leaders are about, well, in newspapers, we disagree with the Prime Minister on this. And I think his credibility has been completely shot to pieces. And one of the reasons I picked up this piece by Danny Finkelstein is that basically what he says is about Johnson, the journalist, and Johnson, the politician. It's quite interesting. He says, Boris Johnson is a man of great talent. I know that because for many years we're in the same trade and I saw him achieve spectacular success. His wit and dash made him almost unfeasibly famous. He built an audience and then launched a political career on the back of it. So far, so good. But his great talents, humour, creativity, chaotic subversion of the rules, do not include some of those necessary to be a suitable Prime Minister. He needs self-discipline and lacks it, an unswerving truthfulness, a quality that eludes him, an ability to master detail, which he skates over, a strong sense of who he is and what he stands for, which he doesn't have. These flaws means that he cannot hold office. Now, if people in the Conservative Party... You see, can I just contrast, if I may, the difference between the demise of Mrs Thatcher, where there was no whimper, there was more of a bang. But basically, Margaret Thatcher, for all her many faults, had a cabinet full of people who thought for themselves, whereas, for the most part, Boris Johnson doesn't. She asked members of her cabinet, when she failed to win a suitable majority, she won, but not a proper majority as leader, she asked members of her cabinet to go and see her individually and say whether they thought she should continue. And when they said they didn't think she should continue, she left. I know what Boris thinks the members of his cabinet are there for, but they ought to be advising him. And finally, of course, the person, and I have great fondness for him, who had a key role in this was Denis Thatcher. He just put his hand on her arm and said, it's time to go. Carrie's too busy, no doubt, choosing expensive wallpaper and not really interested in what he does. But I tell you something, for the good of this country, Boris Johnson's got to go, and he will be dragged out. This game is over. It's just that some of the people won't leave the pitch.
Some of the people won't leave the pitch. Now, Sam Lister, as the political editor of the Daily Express, the Times and David both talk about the PM's dishonesty. I can tell you, I've got views coming in. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people just come in front of me. They don't care. They absolutely, it doesn't seem to matter. Although, you know, a lot of us would say, well, it's integral to the job, to the position, the office that he holds, that he tells the truth. A lot of people just don't care.
Absolutely, and Boris Johnson clearly drives his opponents crazy. But they have been unable to land a fatal blow. Even the resignation of Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid last night, that did not lead the rest of the cabinet to walk out. So he's still there. He's appointed a new chancellor. He's appointed a new health secretary. You know, he's made a very clear statement of intent that he's going to carry on. And what are the means to drag him out of there? You know, his opponents just aren't really very organised. Now, obviously, he's got an absolutely turbulent day ahead of him. He's got Prime Minister's questions. He's appearing before senior MPs at the liaison committee. We could get the resignation statements from the former Chancellor and the former Health Secretary today. That could be potentially very, very excruciating for him. But ultimately, his opponents have not managed to properly stage this coup.
I mean, I'm fascinated about the choreography that is going on, this dance that is taking place. Take Nadhim Zahawi, for instance, who's just been appointed as the new Chancellor. Does that help or hinder, because he's talked about as, one of the possible people who could succeed Boris Johnson if it comes to that? Has he helped or hindered his chances by staying loyal?
Well, it's very tricky, isn't it? Because obviously he will be thinking about his future career options. Will he throw his hat in the ring should the vacancy come up? But actually, if you are there and the chancellorship is available, you're going to take it, aren't you? So he's
not of the PM-ship's available.
That is very true. But is Boris Johnson really going to be out of office as quickly as everybody says? This is the thing. He defies all the laws of political gravity.
See, but the interesting point is about Nadhim Zahawi, who I've known for more than 30 years. In fact, we spent the evening at his flat before I went down to be defeated in the 1997 election. And I once, showing the usual perception that I have, said to Nadhim, "You've got a very good business in YouGov. What on earth do you want to be bothered with politics?" Well, thank goodness he is one of the few shining stars. But I would have liked him not to have said yes to be Chancellor, because I think it taints and contaminates him if you accept my thesis. And we'll see if I'm right. Mystic Mellor fills his crystal balls and thinks that this is all game over for Johnson. And the fact he isn't prepared to admit it yet doesn't mean he won't have to. But Nadhim is too good a person to be used as, to be manipulated by Johnson. But I guess what he feels is, if he is the man in possession of the chancellorship and nobody is going to replace him. I know Liz Truss thought she could be Chancellor. Amusing thought that she did. But Nadhim is a serious business person and a clever man, and he probably feels he's not going to be too contaminated by the curse of Boris.
So, Boris is now saying, or it's reported that he said last night, Sunak's gone, good, now I can cut taxes. Do you think there's any truth in that?
Well, we've heard the cutting taxes promise over and over and over, and actually all we've seen is more spending. So I think, it might be a long wait before we actually see that become a reality. But what's important is that he's actually making the right noises to those people who are still loyal to him. And that's quite important. He's saying, actually, now I'm free of Rishi Sunak, I can actually go ahead and cut taxes. It was all his fault. Shift the blame onto him. This is the new start. This is the latest reset. Yeah. We can move on. But obviously, look, it's absolutely clear this is a very perilous 24 hours for him today. He's got a very, very difficult day ahead of him. But
the paper you have chosen, the Mail, it's quite an amusing headline, really, and it says, "Can even Boris, the greased piglet, wriggle out of this?" So the thing is, with the summer recess nearly upon us, was it 2 weeks away or so?
3 weeks.
3 weeks away. He couldn't he, for at least until September?
Yeah, look, I think, and it's not beyond the realms of possibility, that Boris Johnson will still be here as we go into the summer recess, and Keir Starmer could actually be out. He's still waiting this Durham police investigation into Beergate. He's promised to quit if they find against him. You could realistically see the possibility of Keir Starmer being the one who's out by summer and Boris Johnson still being there.
What about Keir Starmer's tactic of saying, let's call a general election, let's have a refresh, a reboot? Because that actually could be music to Boris Johnson's ears, couldn't it?
Well, I think that Keir Starmer is, not very comfortable with the way that politicians should behave in situations like this. And it's a huge benefit to Boris that Keir Starmer is around. And obviously, I think Keir Starmer is a weak and unconvincing leader. But, we can worry about him next week. I'm worried about Boris this week. I simply cannot see how Boris can survive because the essential pillars that support him have fallen away. And what's going to happen? The 22 committee will be put under pressure to have a further vote. More people will come out with more scathing comments to the point that even Boris, thick-skinned though he might be, is going to have to stick around. All that some of his cabinet have guaranteed is that when Boris goes, they'll have to go too. I mean, it is appalling, actually, in this country. I mean, when Margaret Thatcher's cabinet, although they were often criticised, when they had to step up to the plate and make a decisive move, they did so with courage and integrity. The fact that he has people in his cabinet who cannot see that the end is nigh is a suggestion that the politics has become so weak that even cabinet ministers are afraid to stand up.
But when I look at some of the people in the cabinet, it is quite obvious, is it not, that they wouldn't be getting jobs, Sam, anywhere else. I'm not going to name names, but you can see they're only there at the behest of Boris Johnson.
I wouldn't like to be drawn on their qualities. I'm sure, they all think they're there on merit, and that's the case. I think what was interesting, actually, the Daily Mail has a little quote from Ben Wallace, the Defence Secretary. He has been quite strident in saying, look, I'm not quitting, I'm not indulging in these political parlour games because there's a serious job to be done here. We've got the invasion of Ukraine to deal with. He's going to meet he talks about meeting the brave people of Ukraine on Thursday, and that's his focus. And, that's why he's not quitting the cabinet. He's got actually quite a big job to do.
That's just in. Stanley Johnson, Boris Johnson's father, says that he is convinced that his son will carry on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very fond of Stanley. I regard Stanley as rather a chum. And obviously he's just being loyal to Boris because, remember, Stanley is not Boris in terms of his politics. Stanley was in favour of Europe. Stanley is quite a liberal-minded man who I worked with closely when we were reforming the law on animal experiments, where he was a member of the European Parliament, was a huge help to me. So I guess Stanley's got to say that. I personally hope that behind the scenes, Stanley is suggesting that, there comes a moment when all you do is just stand there with more and more arrows hitting you. And that's the position Boris is in. He's lost his ability to manoeuvre. And though he is a greased piglet, even greased piglets get put down at some point.
Wow. Do you agree with what David has had to say? You can tweet at gbnews.uk. You can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'd love to hear from you.